As the stages of humanity progress, emotions, knowledge and comprehensions belonging to the conscious reality increase. And to that degree, the boundaries of freedoms expand. However, on the other hand, as his comprehension expands, mankind starts to intuit better the things he should and should not do. He feels the necessity of obeying these, and when this is the case, he starts to feel the necessity of limiting his freedom by himself. In this way, the conscience mechanism is gradually comprehended better, and to that degree, man evades automatism, and this allows him to get nearer to his sense of duty, step by step. Eventually, after quite a long time, the equilibria of conscience duality reach the threshold of the intuition and knowledge of duty. After summarily giving the general scheme of the developmental mechanism belonging to beings, we now begin to explain how it works, how it should work in the mankind's life, and in which ways it makes progress. When following the development of the conscience mechanism in mankind, it is not correct to put some states and capabilities such as love, altruism, earthly cravings, conscience in an order as it has been done generally. For example, it is wrong to arrange an absolute sequence in which the stage of altruism comes first, then the stage of love or of conscience definitely following it. Here only, throughout the life of mankind, components of conscience, which are both opposing and complementing each other and directed to duty and earthly cravings, advance against each as the two opposites of a whole. Therefore, the conscience mechanism, which puts into effect the preparation for the sense of duty in the world, exhibits a state of a two-sided whole which sometimes leads in the direction of earthly cravings and sometimes in the direction of duty. And the capabilities we listed above take the states of equilibrium within this whole on its positive and negative sides, which are adjusted to the suitable situations and needs of its every level, and of the opposites ensuring the equilibrium. The higher one is directed to the plan of duty and the lower one is directed to earthly cravings. For example, if the sense of considering others is a higher reality which is more converging to the plan of duty, the selfishness which stands against it as the opposite constitutes the lower reality. However, it should be remembered that actually both of these are but a two-sided appearance of the same value which displays opposing qualities in accordance with the duality principle. We will explain the meaning of these opposites better as we continue to talk about the topic of conscience. Therefore, the conscience is a powerful mechanism which convergences on human comprehension towards the knowledge of duty, in a complete state of duality unit with its both positive and negative sides. This mechanism prepares the instincts at the stage of plant to the automatisms of the stage of animal, the automatisms at the stage of animal to the stage of sense of duty in human life and mankind, to the comprehensions of the intuition and knowledge of duty, that is, to the plan of duty. This developmental mechanism that has reached the stage of humanity is left to man's comprehension, and freedom of will which has more or less emerged. In this way, to whichever opposite of the conscience duality man directs his efforts through the comprehension and freedom of will he is obliged to use, to whichever opposite he adds more value, the equilibrium disrupts in the favor of that opposite. 4. Orientating to a matter combination means sending influences to it, and the influences that are sent are the corresponding values and entail value differentiation in favor of that side. Now, we will elaborate on the conscience mechanism's way of working. In any level of development, conscience duality's higher reality, which we call positive, and lower reality of earthly cravings, which we relatively call negative, stays in equilibrium in man. That is, the values they contain preserve the status quo among them. Nevertheless, this equilibrium here does not always stay fixed, it is disrupted every moment. However, as we have previously said, all disrupted duality equilibria are inclined to be restored, to be balanced again. In accordance with the duality principle, opposites of the disrupted equilibrium never stay in that state. Whichever side of the equilibrium is disrupted by receiving more values, in order to restore it, from that opposite to the weak one, starts a flux of values. And this entails the increase of the value level of the opposing negative side up to the level of the positive opposite. In this way, the new level of equilibrium which is restored between the positive side that increased its level, by receiving higher values actually enters into a superior state in comparison with the previous state. And this means that the duality unit has passed on to a higher level, that is, comprehension in the conscience mechanism has converged on the knowledge of duty a little bit more. On the contrary, if more values are sent to the negative opposite, that is, to the earthly cravings, although the process is the same as before, the direction is reversed. In this case, the duality unit, that is, the conscience, starts to shift a level down. And shifting of the conscience to lower levels means the beginning of its losing its higher values, about which mankind uses terms like silencing or blinding the conscience upon looking at the appearances. Thus, for the former states, they talk about strengthening of the conscience. However, general evolutionary principles do not consent for any beings constantly going downwards. If this is the case, that is, if a man shifts the equilibrium always downwards by continuously sending values to the opposite, and enters into a state of inability to free himself from abusing this comprehension and freedom of will, then beings in duty, who are obliged to help him, consign him to a necessary automatism by immediately sending him strong influences. That is, a more or less similar thing occurs in the initial stages of humanity. They try to ensure his comprehension and will to be directed automatically to the higher opposite by putting before him some attractive or repulsive critical events. Naturally, this state which carries with it a more or less a compelling character, does not occur with ease, unlike the way it does with free will. On the contrary, the suffering and troubling qualities of innumerable events that will be brought forth as the imperatives of automatism would prepare for him many struggles, pains and even, if needed, tortures and deaths, until they direct the will of that man into the path so that his will may acquire the power to orientate to the required opposite side, which he could not use in his free state. Now, let us pass to the opposite components of the conscience which orientate to duty and earthly cravings. Two components appearing opposite to each other in the conscience mechanism in any level are the higher and lower rings, interlocked and particular to that level, of the chain of realities which are sequenced from below to above and arranged in accordance with the imperatives and necessities of the needs, in a preliminary quality for preparing a man with the knowledge of the plan of duty. We define the reality constituting the lower ring as directed to earthly cravings, and the higher ring to the duty. This chain, as it extends from below to above, is from past to future. When we say that the lower one is directed to earthly cravings, we mean the reality which has been lived, and when we say the higher one is directed to duty, we mean the reality which will be lived. Thus, each component of the conscience mechanism contains the lived and to be lived realities of man's life. A reality which completed its cycle stands against a higher reality, which has the quality of converging the man a little bit more to the plan of duty. And this is why we call it the earthly cravings. However, it should be remembered that this lower reality which hinders the higher one for that moment has been the higher reality of the previous level, which prepared that higher level of conscience,